Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast, everyone. My name is Eli. I'm here late. I just had to slap myself in the face a couple times to get myself ready for this. We're going to have a good day, though. We got some good stuff to talk about. Recapping the Angels series. The Orioles took 2 out of 3. Start with just a little bit of news coming out of this week. Austin Hayes moves to the 10-day IL with a calf strain. We kind of took a weird way to get there. They put him on the IL late before the game on, my gosh, what day is it? Late before the game on Monday. We did not have time to get the person that we wanted to call up to the team. We had to then DFA Peyton Burdick in order to bring David Banuelos, who was with us for the taxi squad, to bring David Banuelos back onto the 40-man roster so that he could join us on the active 26-man roster, but we had just DFA'd him. That's why he needed to be brought back on. We then get David Banuelos. He does not get into the game this time, and then is optioned after the game. You know, we're not worried about the 40-man spot this time around. So Heston Kjerstad is then called up, joins the Orioles for the second game of the series. Looks like he is the Austin Hayes replacement. He promptly went 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts in the game. We will not hold that against him. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Like I said, the Orioles took 2 out of 3. It was not quite as clean as that statement makes it sound. The Orioles definitely showed some cracks, particularly in the bullpen and in Grayson Rodriguez. But, you know, we will spend some time and we'll talk about the man who's quickly becoming the ace and the face of this Orioles rotation, and that is Albert Suarez, everybody's favorite Oriole right now. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about him toward the end of this episode. That said, before I go too far, obviously we appreciate if you guys could support the show, subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple. I always used to say Google Podcasts because that's where I got mine, and I felt like it was underrepresented. But at the same time, Google Podcasts has been removed. So don't get us on Google Podcasts. You won't be able to find us there. But wherever you do get your podcasts, please feel free to subscribe to the show, give us a rating, give us a review. That helps us reach other fans and helps us understand how we're doing. At the same time, we are over on YouTube. You know, Tyler has started playing with his video formats a little bit. You know, we will probably try to feel out what is most comfortable for each of us. But if you want to see our faces, I am over on YouTube. I am behind the home plate plaza in Camden Yards, or outside of Camden Yards, looking at Camden Yards, I should say. But, you know, if you are seeing this on YouTube, definitely leave a comment for us. Tell me on a scale of 1 to 10 how likely you are to buy a ticket onto the Albert Suarez bandwagon. I'm full 10. I will conduct this train. And I will see you guys on there. I will happily take you wherever you want to go. And then, of course, we're over on social media, at the Warehouse Pod on Twitter, X. That's where we're most active. And that's where we have some fun talking to other O's fans. We live tweet games, give a little bit of analysis every once in a while. We usually don't get too deep over there. We like to save that for the pods. But, yeah, let's get into it. So, Orioles take game 1. We win 4-2. This was an Albert Suarez game, and in the same way that a Maddox is a complete game shutout in under 100 pitches, an Albert Suarez game is you go 5 2/3 and you have no earned runs. So this was an Albert Suarez game. I should just say this was a Suarez. The same way we say it's a Maddox. It's a Suarez. That's what it is. So I will go through some highlights. I'm going to give him his own little segment at the end of the show, looking into the pitch repertoire a little bit. But yeah, so we'll save him for a little bit later. But anyway, so James McCann had a solo shot off of Reed Detmers, who obviously shut us down last time. There was a cool note that Reed Detmers and Seth Lugo both had not given up a home run prior to these most recent starts against us. So nice to see us doing some damage against really solid pitchers. Jorge Mateo walked, stole second and third before Rutschman brought him home on a single to make it 2-0. Gunnar Henderson single with an Adley double to make it 3-0. And this is the point at which Suarez exits after 5 2/3 scoreless. He gave up 4 hits, 2 walks, struck out 5. And Mike Baumann came in and got 1 out in the 6th to end the inning. Suarez had let a couple runners on. The Orioles scored 1 more in the 7th on yet another Colton Cowser home run. It is so great to see these against the lefties. That was one of the primary concerns the outlets like Fangraphs had with Cowser. They thought he could eventually turn into a platoon guy. He is showing very, very explicitly that he has no intentions to be a platoon guy. He takes a Reed Detmers slider out for a solo shot, makes it 4-0. And then Mike Baumann came back out, and Mike Baumann did Mike Baumann things. He has such an incredible arsenal, and it makes him so wildly frustrating because, if he can just put that fastball at the top of the zone. I did a little thing on Wanderson Charles during spring training on how elite his fastball is. And I talked about how Mike Baumann's has a lot of the same characteristics, just isn't quite as fast. Mike Baumann has some of the best induced vertical break of like any fastball in the bigs. It really is elite qualities. Top 10% or so in how much vertical movement, how much hop he generates on that fastball. And he really just needs to get it to the top of the zone and let the off-speed stuff work out and down in the zone to really make him more effective. All that said, he comes back out for the 7th, immediately gives up a solo shot to Joe Adell, lets 2 more runners on without recording an out. Yennier Cano goes in, induces a ground ball double play. We are happy for that. But then Logan O'Hoppe scored on a Nolan Schanuel single. Cano could not quite get the job done. But so we get out of that inning at 4-2. Jacob Webb comes on for a brief stint, and Craig Kimbrell comes in to lock it down. He does not quite lock it down. But, I think this was kind of an instructive inning, so I'll go through it. He hits Joe Adell, hits him up in the forearm wrist area. He gives up this incredibly weak contact to Logan O'Hoppe, which is really frustrating, because it's this ticky-tack way to get into a terrible situation, a hit batter and a flare over the second baseman. But then, Craig Kimbrell said, "I am Craig Kimbrell." He strikes out Ahire Adrianza. Struggled with that for a second. He then walked Luis Rengifo because that is also part of what Craig Kimbrell does in a really frustrating way. He then gets Nolan Schanuel to pop up for an infield fly, and then Mike Trout comes up. So you've got 2 outs, the bases are loaded. You are winning by 2 runs, bottom of the 9th, and it's Mike Trout, because of course it's Mike Trout. And Craig Kimbrell goes ahead and he punches him out looking. We will credit the umpire, when you can get a half point in sports for, sharing a tackle, if the linebacker and defensive end bring a guy down together, they each get a half tackle. We will credit the umpire with a half K here because the strike 2 fastball was easily 3 or 4 inches above the zone. But we are grateful and willing to share that half K with him in the scorebook as long as we get out of that inning without Mike Trout hitting a walk-off grand slam. So quite happy with that. Kevin Brown has developed a standard Craig Kimbrell strikeout call. That's Kimbrell with a K. And I love that. And I love ending the game on that. It's a good vibe. So what's interesting about this inning in particular, to me, is that, what it really shows is how valuable in a tough situation, and I guess, tough situations most often arise with your bullpen. You are bringing them in to clean up a tough situation, as we did with Yennier Cano, or because they have this high-octane stuff like Craig Kimbrell does, they're getting themselves into these situations because they have no idea what's happening. So what's interesting, well, I guess I should say informative and kind of, a teaching moment for what the Orioles need is the ability to punch a guy out. And the Orioles in the bullpen are kind of lacking that. This is something that this podcast has kind of been pushing on with the O's for over a year at this point. We do have great bullpen arms, and they are very good, but Cionel Perez, Danny Coulombe, Yennier Cano, Dylan Tate when he was on his game, and very much so this year, these are not strikeout guys. They are soft contact, induced ground balls kind of guys. And those kinds of guys are wildly effective. We brought Yennier Cano into the game today, on Monday, and he immediately induced a ground ball double play. That is what you bring him in for in that situation. You just hope that he can get the last out with it. But Kimbrel's ability to come in and in these two terrible situations, first and second with nobody out, and he gets a K. That totally changes the complexion of the inning. And of course, like the ability to go up against arguably one of the greatest hitters of all time in Mike Trout, certainly one of the greatest of our generation, and punch him out with the game on the line. It is such a valuable skill. And to kind of illustrate this, I was like, okay, let's just go check out where the Orioles stand in terms of K percentage, just raw, how many people they strike out versus how many they face. And to my surprise, they're currently fifth in the league with 26.6% K percentage. It's really not bad. Average in the league is somewhere in the 21 to 22 range with bullpens that elevates a little bit. But I looked a little bit closer, and what's interesting here is it's a little bit misleading because we are so inflated by Craig Kimbrel, for one, who is striking out 44% of the guys he faces. Danny Coulombe, who is not usually a strikeout pitcher, but is striking out almost 37% of the guys that he faces. And I can't believe I'm about to say this for the record, Keegan Aiken, who is striking out 35% of the guys that he's facing. So, you see these three big names, and Keegan Aiken is a long man. Craig Kimbrel only pitches in the ninth inning. And so that leaves you one person who you could bring into a situation and get a strikeout. And that is, if you use that one high leverage guy 2 days in a row, you're probably not using him for that third day in a row. And the rest of the bullpen is not really capable of getting that big strikeout. And this is all, while giving credit to Danny Coulombe for being a high leverage guy, which he has been high leverage, but he has not traditionally been a strikeout pitcher. He induces soft contact because he spins the ball so well. And it's a very interesting thing. So I mentioned those three guys and them carrying the bulk of the strikeouts on this team. Well, it's exemplified by the fact that they're the only three relievers in our pen who are actually above that average threshold. They are really carrying the weight. And the other five guys in the pen are all 25% and below. So, the weighting on the mean of what the K percentage is heavily raised, I think, by Kimbrel, by Coulombe, and by Aiken. And, there are restrictions on usage for Aiken and Kimbrel. And really, whether you can trust Coulombe and Aiken to consistently throughout the year be strikeout guys is kind of an interesting thought. I don't think that's the calling card. I don't think that that's what they are really trying to do as pitchers. It just so happens that they've, been really effective this year. Danny Coulombe in particular has been nails. And, if he keeps up his strikeout ways, I certainly will not, I will not complain. I will be here and I will be lauding him and applauding him. But he definitely is just not that type of pitcher in a normal year. So we will, it's a watch item. I think that the Orioles bullpen is still very good. I do not think that there's any reason to completely panic, but we have seen cracks in it, and I guess we will continue to later in this series. On that note, Game 2, we lost 7-4. This wasn't a bullpen problem. This was a Grayson Rodriguez problem. I tweeted out during the game that this was the most hittable we have seen Grayson in this entire year. And really, going back to the All-Star break last year, the only game that I can think of where we saw him even remotely this hittable was that playoff game against the Rangers. He did not have it. The Angels racked up 11 hits, 7 earned runs across 4 1/3 innings. He did strike out 7 guys, but yeah, I mean, the Angels just teed off. In this game, the bullpen was pretty good. We had scoreless outings from Dylan Tate, Keegan Aiken, and Johan Ramirez, who notably did not have a good outing his previous time. So good to see that from Ramirez. Obviously, we're trying to harness this really good stuff from him. So the bullpen was good in this game, but the game was out of hand. Our offense didn't look terrible, but the game was out of hand, like I said. It did take a little bit longer than expected to get to Griffin Canning. If you guys remember, we knocked him out in the early innings during the first series against the Angels. But that said, Gunnar had 2 RBIs on the day, sac fly in the 5th, and a home run in the 7th. Note on the home run, it was off of a breaking ball and off of a lefty. Love to see that from Gunnar. He definitely, I feel like I say this every time I talk about Gunnar, he's not bad against lefties, but there were definite platoon splits last year. So seeing him doing damage, and we will see it again in the next game, seeing him doing damage against a lefty, against lefty breaking balls in particular, I think is a huge, huge win. And then also Ryan O'Hearn brought home Jackson Holliday and Adley on an RBI double. Another left on left thing. He put it into the left center field gap, stayed on breaking ball away. Love to see that. I think that the Orioles offense has been so phenomenal this year. And, we love to play platoon matchups so much. Everybody talks about how Hyde does not follow any rules besides the platoon matchups. And that's fine, but some of these left-handed hitters, I mean, Gunnar would be in the lineup regardless, but the Ryan O'Hearns, the Colton Cowsers of the world are just hitting everybody right now. And it is so difficult to pull them out of the lineup in any situation, which is a super unique skill, particularly in lefties. Right on right platoon splits are rarely so so wide. But yeah, it's great to see. And we'll see more of it from Gunnar in Game 3. Game 3, the Orioles won earlier today, 6-5. It was messier than it should have been. You will hear the first half of this and you'll say, my God, the Orioles had a 6-0 lead. And then you'll hear the second half of this and it will all make sense. The O's jumped out to an early lead. We were facing Tyler Anderson, another lefty, kind of crafty guy, does not throw hard, but solo shot from the man, the myth, the legend, Gunnar Henderson. Once again, off a lefty, once again on a breaking ball. I guess I shouldn't really say that. This was a cutter, but because Anderson throws so slowly, looks kind of like a slider, it's in between. But, once again, a pitch moving to the glove side of a lefty, breaking ball, cutter, whatever. Off of a lefty, moving away from Gunnar. He gets to the barrel, gets to his power. Another solo shot. He's up to 8 on the year. Adley drove Gunnar home on a single to make it 2-0 in the 5th. In the 6th, the Orioles kind of break out a Jorge Mateo ground rule double. Great to see him make any kind of offensive contribution. Jorge Mateo ground rule double made it 3-0. Gunnar then singled to bring home Mateo and Colton Cowser. And Gunnar scored on a ground ball double play from Ryan Mountcastle. And we end up at a 6-0 lead in the 6th inning. While I have been talking about the offense, this entire time Dean Kramer has been dealing. He carries a no-no into the 5th, comes into the 6th inning, punches out Zach Neto to start it, and then Mike Trout shows up and does Mike Trout things. He becomes the first player in Major League Baseball to reach the 10 home run mark. It was a fastball that was high, but just kind of stayed toward the middle of the plate, didn't really get it in on his hands. A little aside, this is an Orioles podcast, but we are a baseball podcast too. It's great to see Mike Trout healthy and doing things. Mike Trout has already stolen more bases than he had, I think, in the previous 3 years combined. So it is clearly a situation where he's like, okay, being gentle has not kept me healthy. I'm going to go play, and, I'm going to play my rear end off. I'm going to go hard. And I mean, he just looks like a force to be reckoned with. And anytime he is on the field, it's good for the game. Anytime he's on the field, we as the fans get to enjoy a treat. Okay, so back to the game. Yeah, Mike Trout, 1 out in the 6th inning. Solo shot brings the game obviously to 6-1. Then Nolan Schanuel singles. Dean is pulled for Jacob Webb. Jacob Webb for people listening in podcast form, they can't see me rubbing my eye and looking off to the side, irritated. Jacob Webb on the first pitch, 92.5 miles an hour, center cut fastball, just above belt high. Taylor Ward hits it 103 miles an hour for a 2-run shot. It is now 6-3. I don't know why it's Taylor Ward, but some of the home runs that Taylor Ward has hit against us, I remember complaining about Tyler Wells' start, him just leaving. I think it was also a 92-mile-an-hour fastball, just kind of middle into Taylor Ward. And Taylor Ward is not bad at baseball. He's not that great either, though. You just have to, pitch to him like he's capable of doing something. And you think we would learn, after giving up multiple home runs on middle pitches to him, that he is capable of doing something and does have a little bit of power. And you think we would just make an adjustment? I don't know. I'll leave it there. So Taylor Ward brings it to 6-3 with a 2-run shot. Jacob Webb proceeds to get out of the inning. I guess he just took the first pitch of the day off. That's fine. Yennier Cano allows a solo shot to Zach Neto in the 8th. Cano has already allowed a couple home runs after only allowing, I think, 4 all of last year. So that's a little bit of concern there. I think it's only been 2 home runs, so it's not this huge sample size. But, he is a tiny bit elevated, and people are able to get on plane a little bit better for whatever reason. Anyway, I'm not too worried about Yennier Cano. I think he'll be fine. But Craig Kimbrell comes on for the 9th, as is his role. That's what we pay him for. Is a ridiculous play to start the inning. Ehire Adrianza, the name I struggled with last time, kind of got it that time. We'll take it. He hits a chopper that just squeaks over Craig Kimbrell. Kimbrell, is kind of trying to move back off the mound and simultaneously to the first base side. So Jorge Mateo, playing second, is charging in, bare hands it. It looks super swaggy. And then the throw hits Adrianza running through first base. And it bounces off of Adrianza and just starts rolling into right field. Ryan Mountcastle totally loses the ball. I don't blame him at all. He expects it to have gone behind him. And he's just kind of looking around like, I'm not quite sure where the ball is or what to do right now. And I think it was Santander in right field, starts sprinting in. Adrianza eventually makes it all the way to third base. So a ground ball again to Mateo. People in baseball always say the ball will find you when you are down, when you are upset. The ball will find you. A ground ball to Mateo. He makes the play at first base, but it brings Adrianza in. And that's how the game gets to 6-5. A K, a walk, and then a caught stealing. We end the game there in the 9th. Another save. I think I'm going to check this live. Craig Kimbrell tied, I believe it is. Oh man, I went to the yearly. All right, I'm doing it off the top of my head. I can find it. Stand by. Okay, I was right. Yeah, so Craig Kimbrell tied John Franco today with his 424th save. That brings him even with Franco for 6th all-time. And I want to stress, Craig Kimbrell is chasing Kenley Jansen who is only one save ahead at 425 career saves. And we, because the middle of our bullpen cannot maintain a big lead, have been giving Kimbrel a lot of chances to get saves. So, maybe this can be this nice symbiotic relationship where the middle of the bullpen blows a game in order to inflate Craig Kimbrel's career save stats. And everybody's happy because the Orioles are winning baseball games. Craig Kimbrel is getting his saves. Everything is good. I think that's, kind of the way that this works out. But we'll watch that throughout the year. Obviously we are cheering for Kimbrel on this side. And if Kenley Jansen wants to, blow a couple games for the Red Sox, we're not going to complain. That's it. So I talked about in the first game an Albert Suarez game. I'm sorry, a Suarez. I talked about him throwing another Suarez 5 2/3 scoreless. I watched this game and everybody is talking about how phenomenal he is, and I figured that he was owed something from me. He was owed just a little bit more attention. I had shown the fake excitement on Twitter. I had, texted in our Warehouse podcast group chat with my co-hosts. We had talked and laughed at like what a marvel this is that Albert Suarez has been the success for us. And then I was like, yeah, he deserves a little bit more than the fake excitement and just surface level fan, because something is happening here. We see him strike out Mike Trout, and like have him take a daddy hack at a changeup that he's nowhere near. Like these things don't just happen to any other player. So I was like, okay, Albert Suarez deserves his own little segment on this podcast. And sure enough, I pull up Baseball Savant, as I always do, encourage it for everyone out there. There's so much information readily available. And I'm immediately hit with this like blast from the past joke. One of Albert Suarez's comps, as posited, as proposed by Baseball Savant, is the 2016 version of an old friend, Alfredo Simon. And if you don't know why that's funny, then you don't know why it is such a treat and such a foreign concept to have a good starting rotation as a Baltimore Orioles fan. And I encourage you to go look at some Alfredo Simon starts from, the like 2010, 2011 days with the Orioles. Anyway, I'm done ragging on Alfredo Simon. He was as good as we had back then. But so anyway, starting with a quick look at his Savant page, I think the first thing to say is overall pitching run value. Run value is a stat that aggregates, which means the more that you do it, the more chances you have to build it up and have a higher number in the end. As we all know, Albert Suarez has had 2 major league starts this year. Other people are on their 5th or 6th, and he is in the 89th percentile already in run value. He's thrown only 2 games, and just the overall value in suppressing runs of his pitches is better than 8.5, almost 9 out of 10 people in the league. He's 75th in fastball run value. He is 91st percentile in off speed. He is just barely above average, 52nd percentile in the breaking stuff, but the breaking stuff is not why we're here. His expected ERA is in the 83rd percentile at just 2.65. His expected batting average is just 218. His whiff rate is a phenomenal 35.3%. That is in the 93rd percentile in the league. He is only walking 4.7% of the batters he faces. That's the 84th percentile. He's giving up barrels at a minuscule 3.5% rate. That's the 83rd percentile. And I will stop to note here that he actually does give up some hard contact. The important thing is that the hard contact is either straight up or straight down. Average exit velocity and hard hit rates are not great for him. both below 15%. I think it was 15 and 7 respectively. But his barrels being, such a low rate tells you that those hard hit balls are not being hit in those optimal launch angles. They are not line drives. They are pop-ups and they are ground balls. And both of those are handleable, of course. We will take that all day. So I just rattled off a bunch of numbers, and I will slow down a little bit to just kind of step back and say, like, how is he actually accomplishing all of the shiny things I just told you? What is he doing that is effective, beyond just looking at the surface level? And, the first thing is the fastball. And, this is something that he came into spring training, and we as fans were like, oh God, he just beat Kyle Schwarber at the top of the zone. Somebody with this prodigious power. I think Suarez went out and, pitched about 3 innings and struck out 7 of the Phillies, big league lineup. The fastball is his primary. He uses it just under 60% of the time. It sits an even 95 miles an hour. I'm using Baseball Savant, which incorporates gravity into their pitch movement. So, I am not giving you a reading on induced vertical break. I am giving you from the time the ball is released, it will drop this much. There is no such thing as a ball that actually rises, contrary to what some hitters would tell you. I remember Bryce Harper was quoted as saying, I don't care what science says, the balls rise. But so his fastball drops about 14 inches. That is relatively average for a 95 mile an hour fastball. However, it runs to his arm side about 11 inches. That is more than 4 inches greater than average. And to put that in context, that is over 1.5 times the arm side movement that a normal fastball at 95 miles an hour will have. Suarez has done a really, really excellent job living at the top of the zone with that fastball. And he has about a 40% whiff rate on that fastball, which is just unusually high for a four-seam fastball. You don't typically induce whiffs on something that's pretty straight. There is kind of a movement in baseball. You'll hear people like Suarez talk about it, that fastballs are in many ways the worst pitch of any type of pitch. The things that move, the things that you can make dance are the ones that fool hitters. And the fastball is kind of a necessary evil because you can't just throw those off speed pitches all the time. You need something to tunnel with them. You need something to play off of them, so to speak. But at the same time, a fastball is just a fastball. And 2 out of 5 times a hitter swings at it, they miss it. They just outright miss. It's not a foul ball, not a foul tip, not anything. It's just a miss, which is really, really astounding. I'll give a couple comparisons for that later. But then, so I want to talk about the changeup just a tiny bit, just to say, like, a quick look at Savant will tell you he throws it like 17, 18% of the time, much less than the 60% for the fastball. Comes in at an even 85 miles an hour vertical movement, similar to the fastball, just below average. But also, just like the fastball, multiple inches of arm side run, better than an average changeup at that speed. So, he is throwing this fastball at the top of the zone. It's got a ton of arm side run. He's throwing this changeup, that similar kind of deal, average vertical movement, a ton of arm side run. That is how he got it under the hands of Mike Trout. But so, like, I want to, again, just kind of step back and like contextualize and talk about the results of these things a little bit. So the fastball I told you had a 40% whiff rate. So I went ahead and I was like, okay, let's just pick 2 really good four-seam fastballs in the game of baseball and see what their whiff rates are. So Tyler Glasnow was the first name I thought of. His whiff rate on his four-seam fastball is less than half of Albert Suarez's. And that is a good indication that Albert Suarez will not necessarily keep this there as hitters adjust to him a little bit. As more data is out there about him, they are able to scout him better. hitters will probably do a little bit better against it. But Tyler Glasnow is at 19.7% whiff rate, less than half. Again, less than half of the whiffs induced on Albert Suarez's fastball. Tyler Glasnow induces those on his. And then I picked the GOAT, the golden child of four-seam fastballs in the game today, and that's Spencer Strider. I used Strider's numbers from last year since he obviously is dealing with elbow issues, and those clearly hurt him in his last game. I think he only averaged like 94 miles an hour before they said, okay, something is wrong. So using last year when he was the guy who just averaged 97, 98 miles an hour with the wipeout slider, that was only 28.7% whiff rate on his four-seam fastball. So, again, another 10% of fastballs that Albert Suarez throws relative to Spencer Strider that are swung on will just be misses. Part of that, again, is because he has been really effective keeping the fastball at the top of the zone. He has been locating it well. And, he has the changeup and one more pitch in the cutter that really play off of it pretty well. I want to make one more note here. This is something that, Baseball Savant will not show you. And it is that Enos Harris tweeted out that there are only 3 pitchers in baseball with more vertical and horizontal movement on their four-seam fastballs. So again, I told you that the vertical movement in itself was relatively average. The horizontal movement was pretty elite. However, the combination of those two, achieving that horizontal movement without completely sacrificing the vertical, there are only 3 pitchers in baseball with more vertical and horizontal movement on their four-seam fastballs. And those are Shane Bieber, Kevin Gausman, and the man we just talked about, Spencer Strider. 3 of the genuinely elite fastballs in the game of baseball. And those are the only 3 fastballs that have more total movement as a package than Albert Suarez's. Albert Suarez. Yeah, so this combination of, vertical movement and horizontal movement on the fastball, even though the vertical movement is relatively average, again, I'm just reiterating the point, the combination of both is truly, truly elite. And he's chucking it at 95 miles an hour. The Strider obviously throws hard. Gausman is right about there in the around 95 mile an hour range, and Shane Bieber is less. He's only thrown 92 or so. He is also out for the year with an elbow injury because every pitcher on earth is getting hurt, but I digress. So looking at the changeup, this was the thing that really piqued my interest during this last start against the Halos, because he was, primarily a fastball cutter guy. In the first start against the Twins, he threw 7 changeups. I think it was 9% of the pitches he used. Less than 1 in 10 pitches was this changeup. So it was present, but it wasn't featured, I guess is the point. There were 4 swings against it, none of which were whiffs. There was 1 called strike. A CSW of 14% is not exactly amazing. He used the fastball 6 times as often, the cutter twice as often. The changeup was a little bit of an afterthought. It was a change of pace. He had his 2 primary pitches, though. In this start against the Angels, he threw over 3 times as many changeups. He threw 22 changeups. It supplanted his cutter as his first secondary pitch. And the results were amazing. He got 12 swings against it. There were 4 whiffs. There were 5 called strikes. It's a 33% whiff rate, 41% CSW. And 4 balls were put in play with an average exit velocity of under 75 miles an hour. He got 2 of his 5 strikeouts on the pitch. I talked about the one to Trout already. There was another to Logan O'Hoppe, if I remember correct. I think that's right, Logan O'Hoppe. And, a 3-2 changeup to one of the best hitters in the world is just this gutsy call. And it was so effective. He painted it on the inside black, got it in under the hands. I am such a sucker. I think I talked about this with Grayson last year. I'm such a sucker for same-handed changeups. Same-handed off-speed pitches are, the lower inside quadrant is a dangerous place to go because if you don't get it there, then you're just throwing soft and middle in. But when you get there, you can get pitches under the hands of hitters in this extremely effective way. Just taking a quick drink. So, he's able to get this in under the hands of Mike Trout. His locations on the changeup were a bit sporadic. They were mostly arm side. They stayed out of the middle of the plate, but he did try to backdoor a couple and actually executed a few of them. I'm extremely excited about the changeup. I will say, for those of you who saw it on Twitter, I know I've got like some people who listen to the show who also follow over there. I put out this tweet that, Baseball Savant during the game had been saying that Albert Suarez's changeup had cut about 300 RPM, was dropping about 5 inches more, was running about 4 inches more. And I went back and compared against his results from the Twins game, and maybe, some edits were made to the database for Savant. I admittedly have no idea what happened. The changeup pitch shape does not appear to be that different from the first start. I really, I took a screenshot in the tweet. I don't know what happened. But I guess the point is that, he is using this pitch in a completely different way, regardless of whether the pitch shape has really changed. He's using this pitch in a different way. He's featuring it. He's putting it forth, and he is attacking with it. He is really, really going after hitters. Again, like on a 3-2 count against the best hitter in the world, this is what you decided to do. So they're adjusting his pitch mix. They are adjusting the pitches to an extent. He is with this big league staff, and in a short time, he has made some adjustments that appear to be very, very real, since he signed this minor league deal last year. And I think you have to be just so excited about the possibilities here. There is a chance that he begins acting like the minor league signing that he was. And if that's the case, then we will forever live on and we'll laugh about the Albert Suarez era of Orioles baseball. And the alternative is that the stuff is legit. I've told you, it's like the stuff is good. It's very legitimately good. And there's a chance that he carries with us as, a potential number 3 starter. Not necessarily on our team, but just, like in the landscape of baseball, this is something he could be. So and I guess, on top of all of that, on top of the fastball and changeup, he also throws the cutter. It's not very sweepy. It has a ton of hop, but the point I wanted to make was that this is just another pitch with a 33% whiff rate. And, it didn't even like really feature in my head and in my podcast about Albert Suarez that this cutter is something I should talk about. But it's another thing, that it's kind of interesting because it's such heavy arm side run on the changeup and the fastball. The cutter is not very sweepy, and I think, quite frankly, it doesn't need to be because there's so much arm side run on the other 2 pitches that it plays off of, that if you just manage to keep it relatively straight, which he does, I think it's about a half inch or so of glove slide run. If you do that, then it deviates from the fastball and deviates from the changeup a full 12, 13 inches, whatever it is. And then, so yeah, it's just like, it is the 3rd pitch in my mind, and 3rd pitch according to pitch usage from this last start. But again, also 1 in every 3 swings against this pitch, they miss. He is limiting, like I said earlier, he's not necessarily limiting hard contact, but he's limiting effective hard contact. They are hitting balls in the air, they're pounding balls into the ground, and they're missing. he is missing the barrel. And he hasn't been striking out too many guys despite all of the swing and miss, which is kind of an interesting dichotomy, I guess, a juxtaposition. But I think that we definitely can start to see more swing and miss in his game. I shouldn't say swing and miss, more strikeouts in his game, because there is such a strong base of swing and miss. It's finding the put away pitch in a crucial moment when there are 2 strikes. That is the adjustment he needs to make. And now that he is with the big league club, now that all of this development is going to be poured into him, relative to minor league signing with an invite to spring training, he's going to get a lot more attention. And I think we have really, really good things to look forward to. But I guess taking a step back here, beyond the good talent, beyond like the cool out of nowhere-ness of him, we should point out that this guy had not pitched in an MLB game since 2017. He, literally went around the world refining his craft, pitched in Japan, Korea. He took a minor league deal in September because he wanted to be close to his family, closer, just not over an ocean. I did, this article I'll reference from Ken Rosenthal pointed out that he lives in Katy, Texas, which is where my girlfriend lives. I was there about 2 weeks ago, so I will need to find Albert Suarez, I guess is what I'm realizing right now. Just sometime in the off season, I'll need to find him and shake his hand. All that said, yeah, so this guy, moves around the world, wants to come home. His family lives here. He takes a minor league deal to be closer. He was making 7 figures in Japan and Korea. He wanted to be closer and wanted to have another shot at this moment. I think after his first start, he said that this call up felt better than the first one. This was like the culmination of all these years of work, of all of this work refining his craft. He clearly went to town as soon as he got in with the Orioles pitching development too. And it is just like beyond guy whose name you don't know shows up at spring training. It is such a cool story beyond that face value aspect of it. And yeah, so this Ken Rosenthal article, he wrote it, and I think the lead was kind of joking about how he's not the typical Orioles success story that you hear nowadays. You are used to these 22-year-old prospects who are rising through the system, torching minor league pitching and showing up in the big leagues and doing it. And this is just such a vastly different story. This is a 34-year-old guy. And what Rosenthal was trying to make a point about, though, is that this is if this turns into something, this is an equally valid thing stating the credentials of the Orioles front office, of the scouting department, of the pitching development team. And, it speaks to beyond simply like all of the Gunnar Hendersons and everything that we see. It speaks to what real development is. It's not just that we have high draft picks. It's, like we took Kyle Bradish, who was a relatively forgotten prospect. We got him in a trade and turned him into a legitimate ace. The system is turning out talent, and we are, taking bodies and turning them into talent. That's like not the most human-centric way to look at it, I guess is the way to say that. But, it is speaking to how healthy the state of the Baltimore Orioles is in every facet of our system. We are, this dominant developmental force. We are dominant at the big league level. And we are also, scouting international leagues and finding somebody like an Albert Suarez. It's just super special. I really, I think he's such a cool story in so many ways. I might have to get me a jersey. So coming up on deck, the Orioles have an off day today, Thursday the 25th. We fly home to Oriole Park at Camden Yards. We're going to see the Oakland Athletics there. soon to be just the Athletics after this year ends. We've got a 3-game set over the weekend. Friday, I don't know, you could call him the ace, but we all know it's Albert Suarez, but the ace or whatever of the staff. Corbin Burns is going to take the ball against Ross Stripling. Saturday, Cole Irvin will take the ball against JP Sears. Battle of the finesse lefties. I will give some credit where it's due. Sears has been throwing the ball really well recently. I think he shut out the Yankees through 6 2/3 or something of that sort in his last start. I very much enjoyed watching him strike out in order Soto, Judge, and Stanton. That felt really good. I enjoyed it. And anytime he wants to be good against another team, he can do that, and I'll cheer him on. On Sunday, Paul Blackburn is going to take the ball against everybody's favorite pitcher, TBD. Word on the street is that TBD could be John Means if he rebounds well from this latest rehab start. They had actually penciled in a starter and then kind of retracted it. John Means is quickly running out of time on his rehab. It has a maximum of a 30-day rehab stint, and he has been down there pretty much the entire month. So chance we see John Means in Oriole Park at Camden Yards on Sunday. The guy just had a birthday yesterday, the 24th, if I remember right. So happy birthday to John Means. And before I get out of here, on another rehab note, Cionel Perez began a rehab assignment today with Norfolk, or I guess yesterday. I'm recording this very late at night. Yesterday with Norfolk on the 24th, threw about 13 pitches. Apparently took the loss. I'm not too worried about it. Didn't throw all too much, but when you talk about, getting pieces that can make the Orioles lineup longer, so to speak, lengthening a lineup, this is what Cionel Perez will do for our bullpen. I have made jokes in here about the middle relief just wanting to pad Craig Kimbrell's save stats when we have a big lead. That will not be so possible when Cionel Perez comes back. Hopefully he will come back in good form, look like the mid to late inning weapon that he has been for us, and give Craig Kimbrell a couple days off. That'd be great. It'd be great. So thank you all for listening. This has been the Warehouse Podcast. My name is Elijah. Once again, would love to, ask you guys with humility to subscribe to the podcast, give us a rating, give us a follow, reviews, whatever you can. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on social at the Warehouse Pod, over on Twitter primarily. And if you ever want to chat, you can join us over there. You can also email us at thewarehousepod@gmail.com. Love hearing from you guys. And that's all I got. So once again, leave a comment, 1 to 10. How likely are you to buy a ticket to the Albert Suarez bandwagon that I will be conducting? We're going to drive this caravan through the streets of Baltimore. I don't know what else to say. Right down Pratt Street. So thanks all for listening, and enjoy your evening, and go O's.